Rule one of my playbook is throw out the last playbook. And if you're sitting in a space that is inspiring to you or makes you feel like a pro, you're gonna be better, right? And more inclined to want to work there. I like to create accidental collisions between people. It's like a mini neighborhood, I guess, in many ways. But think through it like a hotel. Like, what's the arrival sequence? When you get dropped off as a guest, you walk through every inch of the experience. And I think with office design, that same approach should be taken. Every little detail has to have some story about it, right? There's some reason why this was chosen to be here. Downtown or at the office is actually, it's not a drag. It's actually a great thing. You're not isolated. You're in an environment that's where you can get your work done, but also pop out and do other things.
So this space is the vision of Tanner Campbell, who is president of Aspect Company. Tanner is an expert in hospitality, branding, and experiential environments. And he leads projects on both sides, the creative as well as the development side of the business. His projects have earned numerous awards, including a Michelin Key, Michelin Stars, Michelin Bib Gourmand, and James Beard nominations, and the list goes on. The Aspect Company is a multidisciplinary advisory firm that consults with clients on creating new ideas, solving problems, and creating differentiation, competitive differentiation through environmental design. Tanner, welcome, and thanks for enabling us to use this space.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I want to get to talking about how the work that you do can impact our work environments. But first, I'd like to ask you to maybe set some context for us. How do you look at these types of projects when you're starting out? So what's the secret sauce?
Rule one of my playbook is throw out the last playbook. Each project, each situation has its own nuances and is unique, but there are some fundamentals there. I think for me, with regards to the built environment, I tend to extrapolate lessons I learned from Jane Jacobs in The Life and Death of Great American Cities. I sort of take from what I learned from her writing and her philosophy and apply it at a much smaller level within and inside buildings to try to create a great neighborhood. It's like a mini neighborhood, I guess, in many ways, but that incorporates different uses, a different experiences a person can have, and activation across an 18-hour day for whoever's inhabiting it, the place. I think I like to create accidental collisions between people that may result in anything from friendship to romance to business opportunity, depending whatever your mindset is or whatever was happening, but just to bring people together. And I think it's probably why I went into hospitality, into hotels in the first place, because you actually get to witness the fruits of your work with people smiling and connecting, and you can see real joy in people's faces if you do it right. It just is such an awesome platform to be able to work with so many creative, interesting people, both from just with regards to the hotel and the staff and hospitality, but also all the collaborative stuff you can do with food and beverage, with retail, with fashion, just across industries. And to me, that's what really drew me into that field at first, and then subsequently realized that that's something that should be part of an office environment or part of a residential environment.
Yeah, well, I think that's what's so great about this space. It's got a great vibe to it, but there's so many different amenities in here, and it's the interaction of all of those amenities that really kind of energize the space. And I think we're in a world today where people are trying to figure out how to create an office or work environment that mimics some of that. So, from your perspective, if you're looking at an office environment, which is probably a lot more static than what we're sitting in now.
Mm.
What sort of things can you take from the hospitality industry that are going to, really sort of energize and bring people into that space?
Don't try to mimic it, but rather uh, maybe think about its philosophical underpinnings, right? Um, and what is the sort of mixture of things that creates an active space that you want to be in that resonates with people emotionally, um, even if you're not recognizing it. Um, and what are the different types of experiences that can be part of your day. Um, you know, Oftentimes, I think when people think of like, oh, I've got a great office, it's often because it's in a great area, right? It's in a great neighborhood and they can pop out and do different things through the day. It's convenient to them. Being downtown or at the office is actually, it's not a drag. It's actually a great thing. You're not isolated. You're in an environment that's where you can get your work done, but also pop out and do other things. And so why not bring that inside the building? Why not work as a building owner to create that around you? Interior design and architecture really matters. I mean, we are creatures that respond to the built environment in certain ways. And so kind of like step one, just, make it beautiful, right? If you're working in a not a great spot, you're not necessarily feeling great about yourself. And if you're sitting in a space that is inspiring to you or makes you feel like a pro, you're gonna be better, right? And more inclined to want to work there because it puts your mind in a good place, right? And then you can create. I'm getting sort of into the weeds here, but
Well, no, I think that's great. I mean, I
yeah,
think what you're talking about in some ways is the comfort and well-being that, we as humans crave. And I think a big part of that is the social interaction. And I think what you've created here is there are multiple tools that people have that help facilitate that interaction or that conversation.
yeah, no, it's a yeah. Tool is a good way to put it. The way we laid like this hotel out, for example, it's almost like that intersection in Tokyo, right? You're crisscrossing the premises all the time. All the different sort of areas are very connective, not necessarily as like a giant open space, but different spaces with good connectivity, right? Because you don't just want a vaulting space that feels kind of lonely and in many ways, and also when it's not active, it feels really bad. So it's you have if you look around here, we have all sorts of little nooks, different areas that people can do different things in, right? Whether it's hey, I'm on my laptop, cranking away in the library, or I'm sitting with someone for a coffee over in the coffee shop, or I'm sitting on these little wooden steps here, talking to someone. I'm waiting, waiting to meet someone in this chair and strike up a conversation with the person next to me. And of course, as the day moves on, you've got a restaurant to pop into. You've got a sneaky little speakeasy bar, right? You've got a rooftop to enjoy the outside. That is also an outlet, right? I think it's also like if you see like the workspace here, in order to um, come over to grab a coffee at the cafe, for example, like you walk through the restaurant and then you walk through the kind of front lobby area, and then you get these, you can see like, oh, there's people in the library, there's people, around everywhere. And there's kind of accidental collisions. Actually took this from Pixar, a book on Pixar's headquarters, where they wanted to create these accidental collisions between people because it created these spontaneous collaborations that would not have happened normally, potentially, right? It's kind of like I do believe that the best conversations happen at the water cooler, and that's oftentimes when you see the sort of the power of being in a place together with people. I think it's really important to sort of intentionally set those scenarios, like you said, these kind of like tools to sort of enable it. to happen, right? Or at least make it easier.
Well, I feel like we're almost sitting on Main Street here.
Yeah.
And, we have a restaurant, we have a library, we have a coffee shop, we've got a little nook to sit down. And, we're sitting here in a recording studio with people walking by,
Yeah.
and so there's the opportunity for all these, sort of very casual interactions and conversations to occur. And so as we think about the office, which you talked about Pixar, and I'm thinking of Stephen Jobs, how he wanted to move for the restroom, the water cooler, the cafe, all of those centralized to spark that creativity.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what we're really striving for today within the office. But we've got to make that space much more inspiring.
Yeah. No, I think there's the function of it, right? That you see on plan, and you kind of map it out and imagine it in your head. And then there's the beauty of it, which comes with regards to the design and the finishes and um, the materiality of it, of the space, the natural light, how you mess with that. So, and the furniture. I mean, it's all these little touches, and I think that one thing that I'm sort of obsessive about is this idea of narrative, and that every little detail has to have some story about it, right? There's some reason why this was chosen to be here, be it from a chair to the type of wood you use to, whatever. Art is a great sort of probably the most obvious one, right? But I think if there are things of interest that allow for people to be curious, and it's kind of like if you're curious about one thing, you're going to be curious about all sorts of stuff. And I think curiosity is a very powerful thing, especially when it comes to work.
I'm thinking about, that comment relative to leaders trying to get people back in the office. And one of the reasons they're trying to do that is to, I guess, build and maintain culture within the organization. And I think that culture is communicated often through artifacts or photographs, but it's the stories of the organization. And so something like that, I think, could have a huge impact on the work environment.
Yeah, I love this train of thought that you have with regards to how in all of my projects, there's been a very big focus always going on in the background, at least, of how do you actually how are we creating this idea of brand equity in a place. The same should be done with the workplace, right? It should not follow sort of, oh, this is a popular trend or this is what it's supposed to look like. You have to really dig into your own culture, understand what it is, what you want it to be, and then how can you express that, reinforce it, and encourage that through the physical space, whether it's a touch and feel, aesthetics, how it looks, and also how it functions. How does it pull people together? How does it allow people to pull apart and have certain levels of privacy and focus? Is it easy to get together and collaborate? Is it difficult, right? Is it a pain to book the conference room, or are there, multiple spaces where that's easy? Do you have all the necessary tools? So I think that's something really important. I mean, not to continue to focus on Steve Jobs, but Apple just did a really good job of a lot of that. I mean, they took control of the retail environment and created something that was undeniably Apple. But it carried not just through the store design, but in the fact that they invested in their Apple geniuses, where if you worked at the store, you went through a whole course on how, from like the fundamental levels of the philosophy behind the software and how everything works, and then just the knowledge. And there was just an excitement. You could see there was a real excitement on behalf of the employees to be there, to be part of it, and that they were part of a cool company.
How do we do that with the work environment now?
Well, I mean, you're talking about a whole lot of different companies, right? But yeah. I think it's Apple. It's a cool store. When it came out, everyone's like, "Whoa, what is this?" They're used to like a CompUSA or something, and here was a completely different kind of experience. You attract talent to your business because of what you're doing. Having an environment a good environment also like says you actually care about your employees, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I think if people feel looked after, if people feel like others care about them, if they feel seen, which is something Will Guidara talks about, and with regards to hospitality, it's about helping others be seen. I think that's a really powerful thing, and I think you can really make a lot of progress on it with regards to how you create a space, and not just the space, but also, it's not limited to the building envelope, right? Let's expand it into how you arrive. Think through it like a hotel. Like, what's the arrival sequence when you get dropped off as a guest? You walk through every inch of the experience, and I think with office design, that same approach should be taken. And so it's and then you want to really think about, well, if we're kind of isolated in terms, how do we create the things that would make a great neighborhood? How do we create those inside the building or inside the workspace or around us, right? Owners can get, if they have a building that's not in a great area, that's not super dense or doesn't have a lot of the quote unquote amenities that a good location would have, like find out how to build it inside, right? Or as part of your building. At the Ace Hotel New York, it was in an area which had yet to be referred to as the Nomad District. And we had a big, I think, Citadel Group and what we were doing there had a big part in making that happen. But the Ace Hotel didn't have the things around it. There was one like giant bodega, Cafe 28. They probably had thousands of meals there when we were developing that thing. But if there's like, hey, wouldn't it be great if there was like actually like a high level sandwich place around here? So we went out and we created one. Right, we found this guy Chef Tyler Cord and this little group of entrepreneurs that were doing really great stuff in Brooklyn, and we brought them in and pitched them on doing a sandwich shop. They did that. We wanted to bring in fashion, like great fashion retail. We convinced opening ceremony to open up a location there. There was no good coffee around. We brought Stumptown in, right? And then we brought in the Breslin with April Bloomfield, Chef April Bloomfield, to create not just one restaurant, but two. And as a result, you never really had to leave the place. And while you waited for the neighborhood around you to sprout up, you kind of had everything there you needed. And so we were selling 24-hour leases upstairs in the form of hotel rooms. But, wouldn't it be great if that was how people thought through an office?
What you're talking about in many ways is the sort of lifestyle component that's, I think, very closely tied to the hospitality industry.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if lifestyle would transfer to a work environment, but it might be more the culture of an organization.
I think it's both. Yeah, I mean, I think you want to express your culture, right? That's within, whether it's a whole building or a small whatever your small chunk of real estate inside the building. But I think that work is a central part of our identities. I mean, shoot, we spend like what's this? There's some stat out there, like 80% of your time in waking hours is spent working, right? So, that's life. So that's a huge part of your lifestyle. And you can even, look at groups of people in different industries, and they start to get grouped and profiled into certain types of identities. Oftentimes people define themselves through their work. So how are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm in finance, or I work in tech out in California. Like, it's a big part of it. It's not who you are or holistically, but it has a huge impact on it. So I think you do need to think about lifestyle, and then it kind of circles back around again to the importance of thinking about the lifestyle you want people to have, or what is attractive, or what they want in order to capture your talent. So. Similar to sort of building or creating a space that makes people feel a certain way, that makes them feel good, makes them feel like a pro team versus a JVB team, right, or something like that. I think it comes back around to showing people that you care, that you're actually thinking about these things. It's kind of like you ride your bicycle, right? Great for you.
Yes.
Angry. I love it. But dangerous. But I think at least here in DC. And but if you're, and this is obviously low hanging fruit, everyone's figuring this out. But it's like, yeah, so make sure you have like a bicycle rack or an area where you can secure stuff. But don't just have it outside in the corner where you have to like hook it up in the rain. Maybe make it a little more hospitable. Make it part of your parking, and also make sure it's free, or make sure do things that where it shows that you're not just thinking about what happens when they get to the workplace, but maybe to create a little comfort in how they arrive, how they get there, and show that you're sensitive to kind of their lifestyle.
I'm also thinking that in the hospitality industry, there's a very good balance between private and public spaces. And I think that some of that enters into the work environment, because now we're looking at the work environment as a much more social engagement with people, but there's still the need to do private work. And I think what we're seeing emphasis on is the casual interaction in those meeting places, which are probably in a more public setting. So there's got to be a balance of that somehow within the work environment.
Yeah, I think it's a good observation, right? In a hotel, you can always retire to your room. And so you kind of can control how that works. Your room's really small. Then, yeah, shoot, I don't want to hang out here too long. It forces you down to the public spaces. But you could that's still your little sanctuary. I think in the co-working space, what we discovered through a lot of trial and error was that having a combination, the ability to have a private office, but also those sort of social open spaces to use is kind of a good formula. And if you look at this in DC, for example, they're like different tiers. So if you want to be by yourself, like you're in your you're in your office, or you're kind of, when you're in your office, that's quiet time. People are jamming, producing something, whatever. Then there's these sort of coffee table level areas that are more social. There's also just the tables, at the desk height, where if you don't feel like being in your own office, and you'd rather just have just that right amount of distraction and background noise, you could go sit out in the lounges that are on those levels. And when we were walking the other day, we saw that happening all over the place. You saw people in the offices, saw people that had offices sitting out in the open space. And then if you really want to be in a more open place, you came downstairs here, right, to the restaurants and library and stuff, where it was truly a public place. But that also was because that's sometimes what you want. I mean, I that's why you see, I think, coffee shops do so well with regards to people just parking and like doing work during the day, because I can't remember who the author is, but someone described it this way: it's like just the right amount of background noise. You could be completely working by yourself, but there was just enough buzz that you didn't feel lonely, right? Or something like that.
That's a great thing about a coffee shop.
Yeah.
You sit in there and it's got this.
Plus you got caffeine.
Yeah.
Which is helpful. But, the Ace Hotel in New York was like that. We created this lobby, this 3,000 square foot lobby that we thought it would work, but we didn't realize that just to the extent of its success and impact. And this was a space that people they didn't do work in their rooms. They came downstairs, they sat at a communal table. If they wanted to be left alone, they put headphones on, and they would be there all day long. They would take meetings, people take meetings in there. It was fun for me because, you'd see like Malcolm Gladwell come in, and sit down and do work there. So it was pretty cool, the way it works. But I think giving people that mix of experiences that they get to choose, right, for whatever it is that they're doing is, I think, something that we should think about with regards to work design.
So I'm thinking that there are a lot of people out there struggling now, trying to figure out what their work environment should be. So after they hire a consultant like you, what's the first question that you're going to ask them?
Really, it starts at at the narrative, the story, what's the story level, right? Let's start at the beginning here. Like, what is what is this company? What is the culture? What are you just really understanding who they are, the people they have, and really understanding that their most valuable asset, which is the talent. And then, of course, then you start to evolve that to say, okay, then what are you trying to accomplish? Again, it's like I say with the playbook, everyone's different, right? And so you have to, while there are sort of learn best practices and things like that, you have to be careful not just to apply a formula, because there's an art in it as well as a science. And I think if you start at this human level and thinking about it through the lens of a storyteller, it's which is the most powerful mechanism
Sure.
human tradition, then I think you're off to a good start.
But I'm sitting here, listening to you and thinking, who gets to tell that story? Is that the leader, the CEO, or is it the people that are living in the space?
I think it's a little bit of both. It's a great question, because it's like, how do you figure it out, right? You have to have your own vision. The leadership of the CEO, the team that's brought together, kind of create these spaces. I think you've got to have your own creative ideas to move the thing forward. But I think at the same time, you got to make sure that you're also tapping into and really, this is where sort of empathy comes in, is truly stepping into the shoes of everyone else and understanding what that's like. You've got to understand the team, and you got to understand the people at all levels, and understand the variety of different experiences that they're having there and what it means.
Yeah, Tanner, I'm curious, you've created a great vibe, a great experience here. How about the people that work here? What's the experience like for them? How do they get inspired to work here?
If you don't treat your employees the way that you would treat your guests, how can you expect them to pass that same thing on? Also, just take care of people, care about them. So, you just want to make sure that the back of house spaces are functional, right? They have the things that they need. Do everything in your power to, provide, the different space, like, little cafe, little break rooms and stuff like that, and make them part of the process. Co-create things, but it makes people feel taken care of and looked after, and not as a hierarchical situation at all, but as ladies and gentlemen working with ladies and gentlemen, and then do things that show that you actually care a little bit more.
So I'm sitting here thinking one last question I'm going to ask you is, where do you go for your inspiration and for your ideas?
It's a good question. I find that traveling, actually, it's when I travel, it's one of those things where I'm like, this is okay, we're gonna have to hike over here and do this, and it's not fun to fly. But then every time come back being inspired by one thing I saw, right, or witnessed, or people that I met. So I think kind of getting out of your comfort zone and going and forcing yourself to travel and have experiences and go to different places provides a lot of inspiration. Like, I thought that George O'Keeffe's house at Abiquiu, New Mexico would be the last place that would be inspiring to me from a perspective of workplace design. I was working on a project in East Austin at the time, and my now wife and I went to Santa Fe with my family. We went, and literally came back, was like, I got it. Like, here's what we need to do, and it was inspired by this Adobe house. Who knew, right? And so, and also beyond. I mean, so it was. I think that's a big source of inspiration. I think New York had inspiration around every corner in terms of urban stuff.
Sure, yeah.
New York's the kind of place where there's just so many talented people, and people just go for it. And I think also something that DC struggles with, actually, is like, there's a lot of small places, right? You got a lot of small footprints. So you can be a person who just decides, I'm going to make the best, pork sandwich on the planet, and I'm going to do it in 150 square feet here on the Lower East Side, right? And all of a sudden you witness this and it's incredible. And you see this just absolute laser focus and commitment from an individual. You're like, that is passion. And wow, this is a delicious sandwich, right? So, and then inevitably it's like, it looks really cool too. Whether they have a bunch of money to spend on it, or they have like, $25 to spend on the design, it's, there's just so much creativity there. There's a lot of people there.
Well, Tanner, this has been an honor to have the conversation with you. Thank you. I think you've shed a lot of insight into ways that we should be thinking about our work environments and people and how they all interact. So thank you very much.
Hey, this is fun. I love talking about this stuff. So thank you.
I'd like to thank Tanner and also Eaton DC for allowing us to use this incredible recording studio. I'd like to give a special thanks to Andrew Grant, who helped us to organize this and get set up in Eaton DC in the studio here. There's a great vibe hanging out here, and we've had a lot of fun having this conversation.